What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the show. So I want to show you the latest numbers when it comes to the Texas primaries. We're talking about early voting, so that's what we're going to focus on in this video. I also want to talk a little bit about the president's job approval. So we're going to go through all the different categories and see how the president's doing overall. This matters because, remember, the midterm election, this is going to be a referendum on the president. If the president is not doing well, we're going to see that reflected in this election. So that's what we're going to focus on in this video. But first off, you guys can do me a favor. Please like the video. And if you're watching this video and you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. Okay, so let's go ahead. We can flip over. We're going to take a look at the Republican side first. And Republicans, as it stands right now, we're looking at Vote Hub. As it stands right now, the numbers look like 732,144 ballots cast. So if you compare that to 2022, right now we have 71%, 71.4% of the final numbers that we saw in 2022. So if we look at more information here, so early voting, we just want to look at early voting, 694,771 ballots cast. Mail-in ballots so far, 37,373 ballots cast. And that gives us the total that we just went over. And going back to 2022, if we were going to compare back in 2022 to the same date that we're looking at right now, the numbers were 463,116 ballots cast. Now, the overall final votes in 2022, it was 1,025,018 ballots cast. So you see already Republicans are moving. I mean, they're almost at 100%. Now, Democrats, let's take a look at Democrats. Democrats are even showing more numbers. So we're seeing a bigger surge when it comes to Democrats. So Democrats right now, 869,118 ballots cast. Okay, that's 139% of the 2022 numbers. So they've already surpassed what we saw in the last midterm election back in 2022. Now, if we look at more of the details here, early voting is at 830,624 ballots cast. We're looking at mail-in ballots, 38,494 ballots cast. That gives us that total there. And then if we compare that, if we go back to 2022, this is what we saw at the same time period, 291,243 ballots cast. And then if we look at the final numbers in 2022, and remember, we're going back to 2022 because that was the last midterm election. So we're comparing that. It was 625,152 ballots cast. And so you see Democrats are showing a major surge. Now, Republicans are also showing a surge. And so that's not to be overlooked. But I think the big story right now is Democrats are coming out to vote. Okay, they're coming out in droves and they want change. And we'll have to see if we see this same push in the general election in November. So no matter who wins, if it's Tallarico or Crockett, will we see this same surge in the general election? So that's what we're going to have to wait to see. But right now, I think the Democratic Party in Texas is very happy to see what's currently taking place. So let's go ahead and take a look at the president's job approval. We're using Real Clear Politics here. And the first thing that we're looking at is the overall job approval. Now, remember, we're looking at the top bar here. This is the yellow. It's showing the spread at minus 13.7. So disapproval is at 56.1. Approval is at 42.4. We'll look at just two or three of the latest polls. We have the CBS News poll. This was conducted between February 20th and February 23rd. You have approval at 40%, disapproval at 60%. The spread there is minus 20. Economist YouGov, this was conducted between February 20th and February 23rd. You have approval at 42%. You have disapproval at 57%. The spread there is minus 15. And then we'll look at the Morning Consult. This was conducted between February 20th and February 22nd. Approval at 45, disapproval at 53. The spread there is minus 8. Okay, now let's move to the economy. We have the spread at minus 14.8. So you have disapproval at 55.6. You have approval at 40.8. Looking at a few of the latest polls, we have Big Data poll. This was conducted between February 16th and February 18th. 42% approve, 53% disapprove. The spread there is minus 11. ABC, Washington Post, Ipsos poll. This was conducted between February 12th and February 17th. You have approval at 44. You have disapproval at 55. You have the spread there at minus 11. And then the Morning Consult poll. This was conducted between February 13th and February 16th. You have approval at 43. You have disapproval at 50. The spread there is -7. Okay, so now let's look at the president on foreign policy. So the Real Clear Politics average, we're showing a spread of -15.3. You have disapproval at 54.1. You have approval at 38.8. Looking at some of the latest pollsters, we have the Economist YouGov conducted between February 20th and February 23rd. You have approval at 41. You have disapproval at 54. The spread there is -13. Big data poll. This was conducted between February 16th and February 18th. You have approval at 43, disapproval at 52. The spread there is -9. And then Morning Consult. This was conducted between February 13th and February 16th. Approval at 43, disapproval at 49. The spread there is -6. Now let's look at immigration. So you have Real Clear Politics average showing a spread of -9.2. You have disapproval at 53.2. You have approval at 44. Looking at some of the latest polling, big data poll, you have this conducted between February 16th and February 18th. Approval at 45, disapproval at 51. The spread there is -6. You have the ABC Washington Post Ipsos poll. This was conducted between February 12th and February 17th. Approval at 43, disapproval at 56. The spread there is -13. And then you have Morning Consult. This was conducted between February 13th and February 16th. You have approval at 47. You have disapproval at 47, and so this is actually a tie. Now, looking at the president's job approval when it comes to inflation, we're looking at the Real Clear Politics average showing a spread of -25.3. So you have disapproval at 61.1, approval at 35.8. And then looking at some of the individual polls, we have big data poll conducted between February 16th and February 18th. You have the approval at 34. You have disapproval at 61. The spread there is -27. You have ABC Washington Post Ipsos poll. This was conducted between February 12th and February 17th. You have the approval at 36, disapproval at 63. The spread there is -27. And then the Economist YouGov conducted between February 6th and February 9th. Approval at 37, disapproval at 59. The spread there is -22. Now let's take a look at the president's job approval when it comes to crime. So we have the Real Clear Politics average showing a spread of -4.5. You have disapproval at 50.2. You have approval at 45.7. Looking at some of the individual pollsters, you have big data poll conducted between February 16th and February 18th. Showing approval at 44, disapproval at 51. The spread there is -7. Economist YouGov conducted between February 13th and February 16th. You have approval at 46, disapproval at 47, showing a spread there of -1. And Reuters Ipsos conducted between February 13th and February 16th. You have approval at 38, disapproval at 51. The spread there is -13. Now looking at the president's job approval when it comes to Russia and Ukraine. So we have the Real Clear Politics average showing a spread of -18.2. You have disapproval at 55.6. You have approval at 37.4. We're looking at some of the individual pollsters. Economist YouGov conducted between February 20th and February 23rd. You have approval at 36, disapproval at 51. The spread there is -15. Big data poll conducted between February 16th and February 18th is showing an approval of 36, disapproval of 53. The spread there is -17. Then you have Fox News. This was conducted between January 23rd and January 26th, showing an approval of 40%, showing a disapproval of 59%. The spread there is -19. And then the last poll we'll look at is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So the job approval for the president right now showing the average Real Clear Politics average at -4.7. You have disapproval at 48.7, approval at 44. Looking at some of the individual pollsters, you have big data poll conducted between February 16th and February 18th, showing approval at 38, disapproval at 51. And then the spread there is -13. The Harvard-Harris poll conducted between January 28th and January 29th. We have approval at 52, disapproval at 48, and the spread there is actually a +4. If we're looking at the New York Times Siena poll, this was conducted between January 12th and January 17th. You have approval at 37, disapproval at 54. The spread there is -17. And so you see, looking at the latest polling, you're looking at the Real Clear Politics average, the president is underwater in every category. Now, there were a few individual polls that showed a tie, and one that was showing the president was up 4 points. But the overall, looking at all the polls, we're seeing the president is not doing well. And I think we need to focus special attention on the economy and inflation. In both of those categories, the president is well underwater. And so we'll have to see if this improves in the coming months. But right now, when we're looking at early voting coming out of Texas, there could be a reason why we're seeing a surge. We're seeing Democrats coming out to vote, because I think there are a lot of people out there that are looking at the president, looking at the job approval and saying he is not doing a good job, and they want some type of change. Now, of course, the president does have 2.5 more years, but I think what some people are thinking is we can have more checks and balances. If Congress flips, if Democrats take control of the House and take control of the Senate, now there's more of the checks and balances on the president. And some voters might feel that that's adequate in this current situation. But I want to know what you guys think. So let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for more, and I'll talk to you in the next one. Bye. So that's all we have for this video. Make sure if you guys want to send me an email, you can do that, david@thetecshow.com. Like the video, subscribe for more, and check out these videos over here for some more great content. Talk to you later. Bye.